Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm working on my 1994 Mitsubishi Pajero. So this is a Japanese import. It's the same as the Montero that we got in North America. The main difference is the engine. So this was the 2.8 liter diesel, turbo diesel, 4M40. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as the Montero. So as far as the work I'm doing today, it will basically be the same if you have a Montero. This chassis code is V46, I believe, which is the mid-roof wagon. Had this truck for maybe 5-6 years. Some of the mods were done by the previous owner. Some of them have been done by me. So this has got a pretty basic lift on it. It's up on the jacks right now, but it's basically a 2-inch lift in the front, 3-inch in the back, so that it can be loaded up for backwoods camping and stuff. And basically it's the torsion bar re-indexing on the front, and it's just a spacer on the coil spring on the rear. Super basic. I'll probably change the rears for an old man emu spring setup at some point. And other than that, the engine's been breathed on a little bit, but I won't go into too much detail there. And bigger wheels, KO2s, 33s on there. Obviously the bull bar, it's got a rack, it's an ARB knockoff, and the awning, and then snorkel and a couple other random stuff. Nice little custom intake and whatever. But today we will be working on ball joints. So the front ball joints have been clicking a bit. They need to be done. And while I'm at it, because it is lifted, I am going to go ahead and do ball joint spacers. So yeah, stick with me if you want to see how that's done. It'll be a bit of a learning process for me as well. Have done the ball joints before, but the spacers will be new. So this is the stuff we've got. These are Mivatech Supreme ball joints. I've used some of their stuff before. They're pretty good. They're greasable and decent product. And this here is the spacer. So this is essentially a 1-inch spacer on there, which goes beneath the ball joint, or sorry, on top of the ball joint. And will essentially correct the geometry, or try to correct the geometry of the front double wishbone suspension. The main thing is that these trucks, once they get lifted, you'll have almost zero travel between the control arm and the drop stop, not the bump stop, the drop stop. And you can shave the drop stop, which this one has already been done, to get a little bit more clearance. So I can show you, well, it's lifted right now, you won't be able to see, but maybe an inch of clearance between the drop stop and the arm. So what that means is, you're cruising along at a decent speed and you hit a big pothole or a big rut on a dirt road, that wheel will drop as it normally would to try and fill that gap. But because it's then hitting the drop stop, it's not going all the way down to that bottom of that pothole like it should. And then you have the suspension crashing down the rest of the way. So ideally, this will fix that, and we'll see if it does or not. And should smooth out the ride a little bit, especially for those big dips. Lots of room with the bump stop, so lots of upwards travel, but just not enough downwards travel, essentially. And this should fix that, or at least make it a little bit better. The spacers I'm using are Tima 4x4. I think it's from Australia. It comes with the spacers, obviously. Those are billet. And these are extended bolts for basically adjusting the camber. And it also comes with extended bolts, obviously, for the ball joint itself. And then these are some spacing shims that we're going to need to put on the other side of the upper control arm to try and correct the camber a little bit, because if you just put these on by themselves, you're going to get some massive positive camber, because that front control arm is going to be sticking out a lot further than it should. So these will basically go behind where that control arm connects to the body and space it backwards, and ideally we'll get back to a decent alignment. I also have this is just a super cheap $15 Amazon alignment tool, so I can hopefully at least get it in the ballpark. And then I'll have to take it for a proper alignment at some point. But this just gives you an idea of what the camber is resting. So I took a few measurements already. I measured the ride height as it was sitting. So yeah, I've got those down here. So basically from the wheel to the top of the wheel well, which won't mean anything to you, but essentially 16 centimeters. I just want to compare that to what it is after we get those on. And then I measured the camber with the wheels on. I'll measure it again from the disc brakes. And it's a little bit off right now. So the left one I got 0.5 negative, and the right I got 2 degrees negative, because the last time I got alignment, they didn't have the proper shims I needed. Everything I've read on these is like about 0.5 is right where you want it, of negative camber, 0.5 to 1 degree negative camber, give or take. I'm not going to be able to get a bang on, but at least I should know how many shims I need to put in to get it close, and then hopefully they can dial it in at alignment shop. So anyway, let's take the wheels off and let's get going. So basically we got three 12 mil bolts here holding in the ball joint, and then you got to remove the cotter pin from the bottom. Not sure what size that is, probably 16 mil or something. And then we will try and pop that loose. I do have a ball joint separator if I need it. Okay, so I've got my ball joint separator on there now. It's actually, my ball joint was a 22 mil nut on the bottom. And I'll get a bit of pressure on there with the impact, so it's squeezing the ball joint. Give it a couple whacks with a hammer to hopefully break it loose. And if that doesn't work, put a bit more pressure on the ball joint separator until eventually it'll come loose and it'll be like a gunshot when it lets go. So just get ready. Now give it a whack. Okay, so now we're going to remove the old ball joint. I've got the knuckle off because I'm doing the CV joints as well, but obviously you don't need to remove the knuckle. You just need to pop this ball joint off, lift it up, and then to remove it, it's these three bolts here, 12 mil on the top and 12 mil on the bottom. So there's the old one. You know, if I wasn't putting the spacers on, if I was just doing these, it looks like you might need to remove this boot to fit it through that hole. Because I'm putting the spacers on, it's not going to be an issue. But yeah, you might be able to squeeze it through, but you might be easier just to remove the boot and put it back on. Just going to clean up the bottom because that's where the spacer is actually going to mount to. So I want that mounting area to be really clean so that it mounts level. So one thing to note is these ball joints came with a grease nipple like this at a 90-degree elbow. And obviously, because these ball joints are now going to be inside the spacer, they're going to be sitting like this, you won't have access to that nipple to be able to grease it. So I just went to Lordco, go to your local parts store, and get a straight grease nipple and just replace it with that. Just like that. Now you'll have access to that nipple even when the spacer is on. You may want to put an extension on here so that it comes up to there, because this is going to get packed full of dirt and mud if you're doing off-roading, or get some kind of cover on there, but a spacer would be easier. I just don't have one available right now, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so you can see I've got the spacer with the new ball joint on the bottom, bolts going through with a washer and a lock nut on there. That all came with part of the kit. Should fit right inside this ring. These are 20 foot-pounds. So I'll suck them up first. Sorry, they're actually 18 foot-pounds. So the next step here is to remove these two bolts. If you can see them, there's one there and one kind of behind the shock, which I'll have to come up from behind. And there's a nut on the back. And then we will place the spacers in there to try and correct the camber. But I'm not going to do that until I get the knuckle back on, because I want to be able to check and compare the camber to the way it was before. So I'll come back to this once I get the knuckle all back on. Okay, so now that we've got the ball joint on, the ball joint spacer, the next step is to put the shims behind here. So depending on what shock you're running, you might not need to remove it. Because I got these KYB gas adjusts on here and they've got this shroud, it's really hard to get at that bolt. So in my case, it's just gonna be easier to remove the shock. It's gonna have a lot more room to work with there. I already did it on the other side and it seemed like that was definitely the move. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the shock. Shock for this one, 14 mil nut on the top and a 19 mil nut on the bottom. You might want to zip tie it before you take it out, just so it doesn't expand. But I think I'm going to try and do it without doing that. Okay, so I had to fight with that top one a little bit, but I got it out. Now it's just the 19 mil one on the bottom. So we'll put this one through here. Okay, that one's out. Now I can take the shock out, drop the jack down. Go. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is remove, not remove. These are the two bolts for the camber adjustment, and there's shims behind these bolts. So what we're gonna do is remove one of them probably and loosen the other, move this whole thing back a little bit, and put these 3 new shims in there. Because if we don't, our alignment's gonna be all messed up. So on the other side, I had 2 of these shims in there already, these thin ones. And what I did is I left one of these in, and then I put 3 of these in. And I measured the camber before and after, and it was basically exactly the same. These are double wishbone suspension, so the camber shouldn't change that much as it goes up and down. It'll probably change a little bit, but not that much. So we'll see what it's like when it's loaded up, but I got it basically to where it was when it was sagging before. Now it's sagging lower because of this spacer, but it was still ballpark. So this one, the camber was a little bit different than the other side when I first measured it. So what I might do, this had more negative camber. So I might take both of these old ones out, just put the original 3 in and see kind of where I'm at there. And what I did on the other side is I removed this one all the way, left that one in just to kind of keep it in place. And then using the jack up and down, kind of pushed it back and forth to slide these in. And what I did was I put this side here, and then I dropped the other side down on top of that, and then cinched it back up. Obviously the kit comes with these extended bolts as well, because it's going to be further back. And these are 19 mil on this side and 17 mil on the far side. So get your 19 mil impact on there if you have it, and then a 17 mil wrench on the back just to keep it from turning. Let's do it. Gonna lift up the jack a little bit. Okay, so that one's loose, but still just holding on with a couple threads. Okay, so that's loose now. I took off the sway bar end link because I thought maybe it was keeping it from the suspension traveling up. I don't know if that's the case or not, but whatever. Now it's moving. You can see I got some movement here. See how many shims are back there right now. So it looks like there was just one shim on this one. Okay, so I'm not gonna put that one in. We'll put the new ones in and we'll see where we're at. Now I can take my new bolt and try and get it in here. So see through the shims and through the back. Okay, good. Now that that's through, I can thread the nut on the back and then take the other one out.
loose. Okay, I'm gonna double check that all the shims are in place. Yes, they are. Now we're gonna torque this to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, so I torqued these down to 80 foot-pounds. I checked the camber and it's basically the same as it was before I had the spacers in there. So I'm gonna start there and hopefully that'll get me at least as far as I need to get. I'm gonna go get an alignment, obviously. Keep those extra shims because you can take them to the alignment shop and that'll help them out. We'll take measurements again once we get it on the ground, but I think this is a pretty good place to start. I've greased the ball joint. Everything's torqued up. And yeah, good to go. One other thing I need to do is obviously put the shock back in place. I like to compress it all the way and kind of zip tie it closed. That way I can get it in place. But that's up to you. There's lots of different techniques. Okay guys, so the truck's back down on the ground. Just checking some stuff. Ride height's a little bit higher in the front now. I've gained about 4 centimeters on each side, 3.5 centimeters. So I might be able to dial back the torsion bars a bit. Also, I don't know if it's settled yet. I might go down a little bit more. As far as the camber goes, this side is pretty much bang on. I mean, that's like probably about a 0. But the backs have a little bit of negative, so I wouldn't mind pulling it in, you know, going for like 1 degree of negative camber possibly, or at least half a degree. But again, once I drive around, it might settle more. This side looks like it's got a little bit of positive camber on it. Maybe +1. So that one might need a bit of adjustment, but it's good enough to drive. I'm gonna take it to a alignment shop and get it sorted out. Anyway, hopefully that helped. Thanks for watching, guys.